My name's Christopher. I'm 29 now. But this all started a decade ago, back when I was 19. Still living at home, still naive enough to believe that family had your back no matter what. I grew up in a pretty average suburban neighborhood, the kind where everyone's lawn is trimmed just enough to pass HOA inspection, and people wave at each other more out of habit than warmth. Our house had 3 bedrooms, a finished basement, and a detached garage that my dad insisted on locking like it was Fort Knox, even though there was barely anything in there worth stealing. My parents had been married for 22 years at that point, though the last 5 of those were nothing but simmering arguments and cold shoulders. I could hear them fighting through the walls almost every other night. By the time I was 16, I'd learned to fall asleep with my earbuds in and my playlist on shuffle just to drown out the tension. Dad was always intense, not physically abusive, but stern in a way that made everything feel like a test you could fail. He had this permanent scowl etched into his face, like even breathing too loud would earn you a lecture about respect. He worked in commercial real estate and carried himself like a man who'd clawed his way up and hated anyone who hadn't. Money was sacred to him. So was loyalty, at least his version of it. He never hesitated to remind me and my older brother Aaron that everything we had came from his sacrifices. My mom, Evelyn, was the buffer between us. She wasn't weak, just tired. The kind of tired you only get from years of trying to keep peace in a war zone. Aaron, 2 years older than me, always knew how to stay on Dad's good side. He was the golden child. Football captain, scholarship student, charming with the adults. He could do no wrong. Me, I was the quiet one, the kid who got decent grades, worked part-time at a bookstore, and kept to myself. I never caused trouble, I just wasn't impressive. I remember the day everything shifted like it happened yesterday. It was early spring, a week after my 19th birthday. The weather was finally warming up, and I had just come home from my shift when I saw Dad pacing in the kitchen, his jaw clenched, eyes wild. I barely had time to drop my backpack before he turned on me. "Where is it?" he barked. I blinked. "Where's what?" "My cash. The 20 grand I had in the safe. It's gone." I thought he was joking. $20,000? That was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. "You had 20 grand just sitting in a safe?" "Don't play dumb," he growled, stepping closer. "I know it was you. You're the only one who knew the combination besides me." I stood there stunned. I had no idea he kept that kind of money in the house, much less that it was missing. "I didn't take anything, Dad, I swear." He didn't even hesitate. "Liar." The word hit harder than it should have, not because it was the first time he'd accused me of something. It wasn't, but because this time I could see it in his eyes. He meant it. He truly believed I had stolen from him. Mom came rushing in from the living room, confused and panicked. "What's going on?" "He stole $20,000 from the safe," Dad said flatly, pointing at me like I was some criminal he just caught red-handed. "What? Christopher would never." "Don't defend him, Evelyn. The money's gone, and he's the only one who had access. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out." Aaron showed up a few minutes later, clearly having been called home from wherever he was. He looked between us, confused, then said nothing, not a word, just stood next to Dad with that same skeptical look he always gave me when he thought I was being overdramatic. I tried to defend myself. I begged him to listen. I even offered to let them check my room, my bank account, everything. But it didn't matter. Dad had already decided I was guilty. Mom didn't say much after that. She just looked defeated, like something had finally broken inside her. Aaron stayed silent, and that silence was somehow worse than anything else. That night, Dad told me to pack my things and leave. I wasn't welcome under his roof anymore. I had nowhere to go. I hadn't even started college yet. My savings were pitiful, and I'd never even looked into apartments because I assumed I'd be living at home for at least another year while I figured things out. But none of that mattered. Within 24 hours, I was out. I spent the first 2 weeks crashing on a coworker's couch and trying not to cry every time I looked at my phone. Not because I was waiting for Dad to apologize, I knew better, but because Mom hadn't called, Aaron hadn't texted. No one reached out. I felt like a ghost. And then the rumors started. Extended family, friends of the family, even a few people from my old high school. I heard you stole from your dad. What happened with the money? I didn't think you were like that. I realized then that Dad hadn't just kicked me out. He'd gone to his way to scorch the earth behind me. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family event, I was the elephant in the room who wasn't invited, and if I was mentioned, it was with a shake of the head and a story about how I'd chosen a different path. I tried to move on, really, I did. I worked, saved up, eventually enrolled in community college, transferred to a state school, got a degree in digital media. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I built a life, I made friends, I learned how to carry the weight of being the disappointment. And yet, no matter how far I got, the ache never fully left. I'd hear about Aaron getting engaged or see pictures of family gatherings online, always missing one face, and it would hit me all over again. The unfairness, the betrayal, the fact that I had been branded a thief by my own father, and no one had bothered to look deeper. It wasn't until 10 years later that the truth finally came out. Not from Dad, not from some dramatic confession or heartfelt apology. No, it came from a damn wall panel in the basement. Aaron and his wife had moved back in temporarily while their new house was being built, and he decided to renovate the basement to turn it into a small guest suite. It was supposed to be a quick job, some drywall, flooring, maybe a fresh coat of paint. But during demolition, he found something tucked behind one of the panels, an envelope, old, dusty, and sealed tight. Inside was $20,000 in cash, along with a note in our father's handwriting. It read, "For safekeeping until the divorce is finalized. Hide well. Don't trust anyone, not even Evelyn." Aaron called me that same day. I hadn't spoken to him in almost 7 years. When I saw his name flash on my phone, my stomach dropped. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. His voice was quiet, hesitant. He told me what he found, read me the note. I didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, I asked, "So I wasn't lying after all?" He let out this breath like he'd been holding it for years. "No, you weren't." And then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Dad wants to talk. He says he wants to move past this." That was the moment everything came crashing back. Not just the accusation, but the silence, the betrayal, the years of being erased. I didn't answer him right away, because I knew that whatever came next, it wasn't going to be a simple conversation. And that's when the real story began. When I hung up the phone that night, I sat in the dark apartment for almost an hour without moving. No music, no distractions, just me, my thoughts, and a wave of emotions I couldn't sort through fast enough. Rage, vindication, confusion, but most of all, something hollow. I wasn't celebrating the fact that I had been proven right. I was mourning the fact that it took 10 years for anyone to care. Aaron's voice still echoed in my ears. "Dad wants to talk. Talk like nothing happened." I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying old scenes like a cursed slideshow I couldn't shut off. Dad standing in the kitchen with his finger in my face, Aaron watching silently as I packed up my things, the way my mother wouldn't even meet my eyes as I walked out the front door with 2 duffel bags and nowhere to go. The weeks afterwards when my phone stayed silent, when the people I called family didn't lift a finger to check if I was okay. And now, he wanted to move past this. The next day, I got another call, this time from my mom. It was the first time I'd heard her voice since I sent a card for her birthday 5 years ago. No reply, no thank you, just silence. And now, suddenly, here she was. "Christopher," she said softly, "Aaron told me what he found. We didn't know." I didn't say anything. I let the silence hang. "I should have believed you," she whispered. That sentence didn't land the way she thought it would. It wasn't a salve. It was a shovel digging up everything I'd buried. Her silence all those years hadn't been neutral. It had been a choice. She had chosen comfort,
chosen to preserve Dad's ego over defending me. I lost 10 years of my family, I said finally, because no one believed me. I know, and I'm so sorry. Your father, he thought you'd been sneaking around the house at night. He was under a lot of stress from the divorce. And no, I cut in, don't make excuses for him. There was a pause, then a quiet. He wants to apologize. Did he say that, or are you hoping I'll make it easier for everyone? She didn't answer that. I didn't hang up, but I ended the call quickly. My mind was spinning. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with all this. There was no roadmap for what to do when your family suddenly remembers you exist. A few days passed. I ignored 2 more calls from Aaron and 1 from my dad. Then a text. Dad, I made mistakes. Let's talk, please.
I wasn't going to let a decade of silence and sabotage define me, but I also knew I needed to be strategic. I couldn't let my emotions steer the wheel. I'd done that before, and all it got me was heartbreak and isolation. This time, I'd move carefully, quietly, like he did. I started with my own name. I requested every background check I could run on myself, paid for the full reports, and combed through them. Sure enough, that report came up again and again. No criminal record, but a flag in the system, a filed but uncharged domestic theft case tied to my name. I consulted with a lawyer, someone I found through a friend in the nonprofit sector. She was sharp, patient, and had this calm way of talking that made you feel like nothing was impossible. This is going to take time, she told me after reading the documents, but it's not irreversible. She explained the steps. A petition to expunge or seal the report, possibly a defamation case if we could prove malicious intent, especially since I was a minor when it happened. The statute of limitations would make that part tricky, but the emotional damage, that was real and potentially provable. In parallel, I started journaling, not for a lawsuit, for me. For the first time in years, I let myself write down what happened. The night I was kicked out, the months I lived on a friend's couch, the job interviews where I smiled through my teeth, trying not to look desperate, the Christmas Eves I spent eating boxed mac and cheese while scrolling through pictures of my family gathered around a tree without me. At first, the journaling felt awkward, then cathartic, then addictive. I didn't know it yet, but that journal would become the foundation of something far bigger. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding not just my name, but my sense of self. I poured my energy into work. At the time, I was freelancing as a video editor for small businesses and indie creators. The work was inconsistent, but meaningful. I decided to rebrand myself. New portfolio, new pricing, new clients. I worked nights, weekends, said yes to everything I could handle. For the first time in a long while, I started to feel useful. That summer, I took on a documentary editing project for a local filmmaker who was doing a piece on restorative justice. It was a small gig, not much money, but it lit something in me. Watching footage of people healing, confronting the past, reclaiming power, it hit close to home. I edited that project with everything I had. When it was done, the filmmaker thanked me profusely and passed my name along to a few colleagues. Within 2 months, I had a waiting list. Meanwhile, my lawyer made slow but steady progress. We filed the paperwork to request a copy of the full police report from back then. It took weeks, but when it arrived, it contained one crucial detail I hadn't seen before. A handwritten note from my father attached to the report. It read, "Christopher is a troubled kid. He's been acting out. This isn't the first time. I'm worried about what else he might do." My hand shook as I read it. He hadn't just accused me of theft. He'd painted me as a dangerous person, to the police, to the system. There was nothing in my history to support that. No arrests, no school suspensions, no record of violence, or even a late homework assignment. He had invented a narrative, put it in writing, and sent it to the authorities like he was rewriting my biography out of spite. When I showed my lawyer, she sat back and folded her arms. "This changes things," she said. In the meantime, I continued rebuilding my life in small but meaningful ways. I moved into a better apartment,
Not flashy, but clean, quiet, and entirely mine. I adopted a dog from a rescue, Milo, a scrappy little mutt with more personality than coordination. Every morning we walked the same loop around the park, and every morning I felt a little more grounded. My social life grew too, not explosively, but enough. I reconnected with a few old friends, started saying yes to things I used to avoid. Dinners, movies, even a short weekend trip. The loneliness I'd carried for so long began to thin out, replaced with something warmer. It was still hard to trust people, but I was trying. Professionally, things began to take off. My editing business grew. One of my clients, a motivational speaker with a decent following, offered me a long-term retainer contract. I started making decent money for the first time in my life. Not rich, not yet, but stable, independent. And then, one night, it happened. I got a message from Aaron. It was a screenshot of a Facebook post from my dad. The post was long, overly sentimental, and filled with half-truths. He talked about the power of forgiveness, how family bonds can heal with time, and how rebuilding bridges starts with honest conversations. It ended with a picture of us from when I was a kid, me sitting on his shoulders at a family barbecue, both of us laughing. I felt sick, not because he wanted to apologize, but because he wanted to control the narrative. He wasn't reaching out to me directly. He was performing for an audience, preemptively managing the optics. My stomach turned as I read the comments. So glad you're reconnecting. Family is everything. Proud of you for taking the first step. And there it was again, that familiar feeling of being erased, rewritten. He wanted to be seen as the repentant father, brave enough to own his mistakes, but he hadn't told the world the truth. He hadn't admitted to the police report, or the 10 years of abandonment, or the smear campaign he ran behind my back. He wanted redemption without accountability. That was the moment. I knew. I couldn't let this go quietly. I wouldn't be vindictive, but I would not be silent. Not anymore. I pulled out the journal I'd been keeping and started typing. I poured every memory into a document. I didn't hold back. I didn't dramatize. I just told the truth. I included dates, details, screenshots, and documents, carefully, methodically. I wasn't planning to post it yet. I wasn't sure where it would go, but writing it made me feel strong. And one night, as I sat reading through it, I realized something. He thought I was still 19, still quiet, still scared to rock the boat. But I wasn't, not anymore. He thought his apology dinner and Facebook post would clean the slate, but I had built something stronger than approval. I had rebuilt myself, and soon I would decide what to do with the truth. Because justice wasn't just about being believed, it was about being heard, and he was going to hear every word. I didn't write the post to go viral. That was never the point. When I started typing it, it was just for me, a letter I would never send, a truth I needed to get out of my chest so I could finally breathe. But as I edited it, as I scrolled through page after page of dates, screenshots, photos, and memories, something began to take shape. It wasn't just a rant, it was a record, a decade of silence documented, the kind of story that didn't need exaggeration because the truth was heavy enough. I titled it simply, 10 years ago, my father accused me of stealing $20,000. This week, my brother found the money behind a wall. I didn't post it, not yet, but it sat there on my desktop, saved in 3 places, Google Docs, an external drive, and an encrypted backup. I wasn't going to let this one disappear. This time, I was in control. But I knew that before I made any moves, I needed to understand what my father had been doing all these years. I'd been focused on surviving, rebuilding, moving forward, but he'd had a decade to shape the narrative however he wanted. And if that Facebook post was any sign, he was already laying the groundwork for his redemption arc. So I started asking around. I reached out to Rachel again, the cousin who had warned me about the police report. She was cautious at first, not sure how much she should say, but once I promised to keep her name out of anything public, she started opening up. After you left, he told everyone it was just too painful to talk about, she said.
He framed it like you had gone off the rails, said he tried everything he could, but you refused to admit what you did. Then he kind of leaned into the idea that you were estranged by choice. By choice? I asked. She nodded. He told Aunt Maureen that you cut ties with the family, said you were angry about the divorce and took it out on everyone. I sat back in my chair, stunned. So I was the villain and the one who left? Yeah, she said gently. Your dad made it very clear that asking questions wasn't welcome, and no one wanted to take sides. That phrase again, no one wanted to take sides. For 10 years, they'd all chosen neutrality, and in doing so, they chose him. But now, I wasn't alone anymore. Over the next few weeks, I reached out to more people, a few old family friends, a former neighbor, even my old high school counselor, Mrs. Harper, who had always been kind to me back then. To my surprise, a pattern began to emerge. My dad had done more than just accuse me. He'd waged a full-on campaign. He told our neighbors that I had been stealing little things for years, told my uncle that I had a secret drug problem I was hiding from everyone, told a church friend that I had stolen from my mother's purse when I was 16, something that never happened. One person even recalled him saying I forged his signature to get into his safe. Each lie was slightly different, but they all painted the same picture. I was dangerous, dishonest, untrustworthy, and he never once corrected any of it. He never came clean when the truth came out. He never took down the report. He just shifted his strategy from defense to damage control. And that's when I realized something important. He didn't regret what he did. He regretted being caught. The family dinner, the Facebook post, the sudden warmth, it wasn't about healing. It was about optics.